The Transport Secretary Grant Shapps is here in the studio this morning. Good to see you.
Morning.
So what's happening? 25 years since privatisation, now this massive change. So what exactly are we going to see?
We're going to have one single familiar organisation called Great British Railways, and it will run all the different aspects of the railway in order to bring the whole thing together. It's 3 years to the week, actually, since that disastrous timetable change in May 18, where the entire system melted down. And when people said, well, who's got control of this? The answer was no one. There was no guiding mind. There was no, as the media used to like to say, fat controller looking after the railway. And today's reforms, what I'm announcing, takes care of all of that with a familiar brand, Great British Railways, that I think people will, be pleased to see having somebody in control.
Yeah, but one of the key points of privatisation was to separate track and train. You're saying that completely failed, and bring it all back together again?
There are many successes, not least that twice as many people are using the railways. That was a big success of privatisation. But it became very, very fragmented. So if you were to say, whose fault is it that this train has broken down? There are actually 400 people to allocate the blame within the organisation who literally, crazy, would have to work out the size of the bird that hit the overhead line that caused the problem, and it would be attributed either to Network Rail or to the rail companies. It's just too complicated. But I don't want to go back to the days of British Rail either. We had declining passenger numbers and railway stations closed and things. So this will be still with the involvement of the private sector, running the concessions, running the actual trains, but they get paid for running those trains on time, keeping them tidy and clean, and it will be a single organisation selling you the tickets and running the timetable.
But in terms of not going back to British Rail, I mean, again, one of the supposed impacts of privatisation was that operating companies would have their freedom for certain levels of innovation and what have you. Isn't there a possibility here that Great British Rail will turn into a British Rail sort of Leviathan?
Well, absolutely not what we plan to do with this. So you're right. We want to keep the sort of the private, initiatives, the capital, the innovation, all of that in there. But you've got to have somebody on a railway, which is 20,000 miles of track, organising a timetable, organising the ticketing, making sure that there's a single body. So when something goes wrong, you can say, who is in charge here? And there's an organisation, and it will be Great British Railways who are in charge. So this reform, which is I see is being widely welcomed by industry experts this morning, I think is overdue. I think, as a commuter myself, I just want a railway that works. I want the ticketing to be straightforward and simple. And we won't be going back to the days of British Rail and terrible sandwiches and all the rest of it. It will be a new organisation.
OK, so what is the direct benefit for passengers then? I mean, certainly you want trains to be on time, you want them to be clean, obviously. I mean, that goes without saying. In terms of the ticketing, I mean, it is a bit of a nightmare at the moment, and it's expensive.
Yeah.
Is that going to change?
Well, that's right. At the moment, you turn up at a station, there are 2 or 3 different ticket machines. You're supposed to know which one to get. If you buy the wrong ticket, you can't use it on this service. All of that gets simplified. And you end up with a railway where you buy the ticket. It can only be the right ticket because there's only you're buying the... Yes, Great British Railways. And whichever route you need to take, you'll be able to take. But actually, the other thing is crazy. You stand by these machines, they print out goodness knows how many tickets for a single journey. Why have we even got paper tickets? I mean, it should be contactless. And one of the great things I'll be introducing in June next month are flexible season tickets, because we know that things have changed. People are working from home a lot more. If you're travelling 2 or 3 days a week, you'll be able to use these flexible season tickets. That's only possible because we've started now on the route towards this Great British Railways.
I wonder is this going to guarantee that it's going to be cheaper, though? At the moment, if I travel into London, I live about 100 miles away, so if I travel in on the train, use one particular network, one company, it's cheaper than if I get a ticket that covers all the companies.
Yeah.
Now, is that price then going to go up to match the multi-company thing, or will it stay at the lower level?
No, well, the great thing is, depending on how many days you're travelling in, you might well be able to use a flexible season ticket to do this. And you don't have to work out how many days you're going to be travelling this week in advance in order to take advantage of that. And also, because it will all be under Great British Railways, you can take whichever route you wish to take if there were different options. And usually to get from A to B, there often can be different routes to get there because it's all part of the same thing. One organisation setting the fares, setting the timetable. It's a simplification which I think people will broadly welcome in this country.
OK. So about something which isn't simple, which is the current state of the COVID pandemic. Can you talk about the Indian variant? Because we've still got flights, direct flights coming in from India. There was 4 yesterday at Heathrow. Why is that happening?
You can't prevent British citizens from returning home. No country can ban its own citizens from returning home.
Are these all British citizens that are returning?
It can only be a British or Irish citizen, I should say, or somebody with permanent residence. There's no... It's illegal to come here as a holiday maker from a red list country. And you ask about why the flights are direct. Well, if you think about it, if you say that a country's on the red list, only British citizens primarily can return, but then you say there are no direct flights, then you're enforcing a situation where people end up spread amongst many other flights and making it harder to carry out the mandatory hotel quarantine, which is a necessity if you come back from a red country. So there's some logic, and indeed we're actually trialling whether it helps to have everybody in one place on the same flight, come in and then go straight to government-managed quarantine.
What is confusing, you can understand people being a little bit confused, that we've seen a 28% increase in India variant since Monday, yet the Prime Minister then saying that he's more optimistic than he was a week ago about sticking to the June 21st deadline.
I think it may just be actually the dates when these are reported are not the same dates that are covered, so it will have covered a period before, potentially. But we are seeing, and this is what the Prime Minister and Health Secretary both said yesterday, that fortunately the vaccines are working. So the absolute key is people getting vaccinated. And once they are getting covered against all these variants, including this Indian. There are 3 different Indian variants, actually. This is B16172 that was causing particular concern. But it does actually, you do actually get protected once you've had that vaccine.
Last night when we heard from the Health Secretary, he said, and it did cause a bit of a smile in the office, let me tell you, that he said the government advice on foreign travel has been crystal clear. Even you've got a smirk at that one.
Well, all I was going to say is I announced it, actually, Friday week ago at a press conference in Downing Street. And what I said is, actually, if it's an amber or red country, please don't travel for holidays. It's for exceptional circumstances, and red is only for essentially British citizens returning. So I can be completely consistent and say the same thing today. That is the case. We are saying to people, there's a heck of a lot of hassle involved in, for example, an amber country. You've got to take a pre-departure test. You then have to take 2 further tests when you come home. Yet another one on top of that if you wanted to have tests to release after 5 days. You've got to quarantine. People will come to your house to check your quarantine. I mean, it's expensive. We're not at the stage of saying to people, go to those places on holiday. In fact, please don't. Green lists are for holidays, and a little bit of patience. As the world catches up with our vaccine programme, we'll get more of those countries opened up as green countries.
Well, and yet, people are still going, and travel agents and airlines and everybody else are still selling the holidays and the flights.
But look, we've moved away from a situation where everything it's banned, it's illegal. I know we've got very used to this the last year. Yeah. Everything's banned and illegal, and we're moving away from that and asking people to apply a bit of common sense. People asking for guidance. The answer is actually for a red and an amber list. It's not for going on holiday. And you might say, well, why have an amber? I mean, I've heard this several times, and let me just explain that. Every country in the world is put into the amber category, and then when the Joint Biosecurity Centre look at it, they'll either say, actually, this country has a particularly good record. They're doing all the sequencing. They're on top of the problem. They've got high levels of vaccines. It's a green country. Or there are real problems here. It's a red country. So the default is amber, but amber is not please go and visit there. There's a lot of cost and hassle and quarantine required when you go to those countries, and it is being very strictly enforced.
Look, let's wrap back round to transport if we can. I say obviously you want even more people to go on the trains with this new Great British Rail, and I know there's campaigns to get people back on the buses and what have you at the moment. What about mask wearing when people are on public transport. Should it happen? Would you like to see it happen even if it's not mandated?
Well, right now you do have to wear a mask on public transport unless you have an exception. I've been very, very pleased and impressed. The vast majority of people have been doing it. It's been very good, high levels of uptake. That remains in place. Technically, it's in place till the 21st of June. As we know, we'll have a review. That's the fourth stage of the unlock, and we'll be able to say more about it at that time. But it is, in fact, the law at the moment to wear a mask, and that's something that I think people have just gotten used to doing. People take their keys, they take the wallet, they pick up the mask, and they leave the home. And we're seeing more people come back to transport, as I say, cautiously, but I hope in one direction. We are moving towards a fuller unlock.
Okay. Minister, good to talk to you this morning. Thank you.